What's happening, people? My name's DJ Graish, and in today's live stream I'm going to show you how to make Dubwise drum and bass. Now, some of you may be wondering what is Dubwise drum and bass, so I'm just going to bring up a little bit of a definition that I found online. Let me see if you can see that. So, Dubwise drum and bass. Emerging around the mid-2000s, Dubwise drum and bass is a style of drum and bass that implements reggae and dub influences with DNB rhythms and production. Though it does share some parallels with Ragga Jungle, which similarly mixes jungle with influences of reggae and dub, it utilises newer production techniques of the post-2000s, less chaotic and noisy drum beats, more refined sampling, cleaner mixing, and generally less rave elements, making it distinct from the predecessor's sound. So if that's something that interests you, stick around for today's live stream because I'm going to show you how we can sample some reggae, put it with some modern sounding drum and bass drums, and generally make a Dubwise banger. So as always, I'm just going to wait for some more people to join and then we can get into it. Let me know if you can hear me, let me know if you can see the screen. Shout out to Seebs fam as always. So the track you can hear right now is called Side Quest, and this is a tune that I made on a tutorial. It's called How to Make Orchestral Drum and Bass. So if you want to learn how to make this tune, or how I made this tune, just check out the tutorial on my channel. It's the top one in the Graish tutorials playlist on my channel. So as I was saying, Dubwise drum and bass. Now, I made a mix on my channel a good number of years ago now, which I called the Ragga Jungle mix, but really it was pretty much Dubwise, you know, and there's a blurred line between the two. A lot of Dubwise tunes, if they have kind of chaotic breakbeat based drums, they could be classed as Ragga Jungle. Shout out Manilyn Sahagon. So if you're there in the chat, let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know which part of the world you're in. I'm in Barcelona, Spain, but as you can probably tell from the accent, I'm originally from the north of England. So the weather today started off really sunny, and I went out with sun cream on, went out on my bike, I met my friends, we were all chilling on the grass, and then some massive black clouds turned up. So we were all cycling, everybody had bikes, you know, so we were all cycling down the beach and in the opposite direction from this big cloud, trying to get away from it. And we probably avoided the rain for an additional half an hour, but then it started absolutely slatting it down and we had to look for cover. But if you're there, let me know in the chat, how was your weekend? Shout out everybody locked in, shout out to the people in the chat, and shout out if you're not in the chat, and the people who are watching this back at a later stage. So I'm just going to wait for the tune to finish and then we'll get into it. Oops. better stop that before it gets flagged. So I was going to say, today's tune we are going to be sampling something, and I need to be very careful because a couple of weeks back I did get the stream demonetized from playing too many little vocal snippets. So I've just opened up a new Ableton Live project, and as always you start off with 2 MIDI tracks and 2 audio tracks, and you've also got these other 2 tracks which are return tracks, reverb and delay, and we will be using those today. But what I usually do is delete the ones I'm not going to need. So in this case we've got these 2 MIDI and 1 of the audio tracks that I'm just going to highlight, holding down shift, press delete, so we're just left with 1 audio track. And I'm going to bring in the sample, which you just heard a little preview of. And as I say, I need to be very careful not to play very much of this. So the tune's called Scientist's Ancient Dub, and I am just going to give you a little snippet of what it sounds like. Let me turn off warping first of all. So it sounds like this. Alright, so we've got heavy bass, classic like Scientist and King Tubby dub tune. And you might notice if we zoom out that you can see we've got the main part, which has obviously been put through a limiter and it's like full volume, but then we've got this part here which is a little breakdown. So let me play that for you. Alright, so that's all you're getting. Alright, so I'm going to press Command and E to cut it off there, and then I'll just select the left clip and press delete. And then I'm going to want it to sort of repeat that about 4 times. So, and then from about there I'll cut it off. Alright, so zoom in right in, select a part you want to cut off, Command and E, and then I'll just select the right one this time and delete. So what we've got is this snippet that's going to be usable. Now what I want to do is turn this into a loop and have it at the correct tempo for the project. So right now you can see the BPM's 120. For a drum and bass track, you're probably going to want at least 170. In fact, you know what? Maybe I'll do 170 today. Usually you'd go 174, 175, but I will be kind of speeding up this clip. So if I make it at 170, maybe it means I can speed it up slightly less. Let's see how it sounds anyway. So what have we got here? Let me put it to the beginning, and that'll help me see how many seconds this is, because there's the added complexity of trying to avoid getting flagged for copyright. So if I put it to the beginning there, you can see that this total is 3.5 seconds, so that should be fine now. So you can hear that it's got that one drum at the beginning, which I think I'm going to replace with this here. So if I just grab this bit, I'm not sure whether I should time stretch it first and then start rearranging it. Let's see. So up to about there. I'm just going to chop that bit off and leave it to one side. But I think if I warp this here, and then I've showed you this in previous ones, but for the new people, if you make sure it's on the complex algorithm, right? And what you need to do is just grab the end of the clip and hold down the shift button and just move this sideways like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it and press Command and L, so that brings the loop marker around it. And then if I turn on the metronome, let's have a listen to how it sounds with the metronome. So it sounds good, but apart from that sort of snare at the beginning that we don't want. So if I just drag that over there, I'm going to want it to be slightly shorter. Right, let me turn off the metronome and listen carefully. And I'm just going to hold down Command, drag that a little bit further. And that's basically our sort of reggae chords that I'm going to use for this tune. So I'm going to hit save. Command and S to save. Start a new tune and just call it Dubwise. Does what it says on the tin. Alright, so got our reggae chords in place. And now it's time to start building up some DNB drums. Now, it did say in the little description there that we're going to be making some cleaner drums, right? Now, the standard pattern for drum and bass is sort of like a kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. You know, that standard pattern. But when it comes to this style of music, usually it's like a... I may as well just show you. Wait. Let me go to the jungle breaks. If I go to the... I think the best way to demonstrate this would be if I get the hot pants break. Bring that in. Listen to this break now. You hear the second half of the hot pants break. Listen to the pattern that is making. See what I mean? So that's the sort of pattern that a lot of people do when they're making this sort of dubwise type music. So it's like, instead of this, so you can see the first bar we've got this, the beats 1, 2, 3 and 4, right? And in a usual drum and bass pattern, we've got the snare there on beat 2, and we'd also have a snare there on beat 4. But you can see in this case, it's actually at 3.5. So the second snare's come in early, and this is like a kind of typical pattern for this type of music. So, as it was saying in the description of Dubwise, they do like to use kind of cleaner style drums. So for that reason, I am actually just going to quickly put all the kicks and snares on the grid. So all you do is go into the clip. You've got these warp markers that are just like these little grey triangles. And if you double click them, they turn yellow. Or maybe a different colour depending on what skin you've got on Ableton Live. But in this default skin, they go yellow like that, right? And I'm just going to copy and paste that so we've got it twice. And let's hear how it sounds with those chords. Let me know how this is sounding, by the way. I did notice the hot pants break is kind of peaking there, but let me know how my mic is sounding in comparison to the music, if I'm too loud or if the music's too quiet or vice versa. And I've been getting some comments from people saying that you can't do slice to MIDI on Ableton Live Lite. So thank you, Richie. I appreciate it, man. So Richie's saying that the levels are sounding all right, so that's cool. I was just saying, yeah, Ableton Live Lite. So it's a version of Ableton Live that you can get if you buy like a MIDI keyboard or an interface or some kind of musical equipment. You get this free version of Ableton Live, which is great for beginners to get started, you know. But some people have been telling me that certain features that I'm going on about are just not available. So there's a couple of different ways to slice up breakbeats. And the way that I usually do it with slice to MIDI is not available to them. So you can also do it the audio way. So if you just put the grid to 1/8, then you can see you've got these, each section is 1/8 long, right? And what you can do is highlight a section, press Command and E, and if you just click the line, right, and press the right button of your arrows, you can do this super quick by pressing Command and E, right arrow, Command and E, right arrow, Command and E. Just keep doing that, repeating it, going through, slicing and slicing and slicing until you've got it all sliced up into eighth notes. Then if you want to, you can actually start renaming and recoloring these. So for example, you could call that kick, right? Or you could call it kick 1, right? So then this slice here, you could call it a shuffle, etc, etc. And then you can, in previous tutorials, I've kind of chosen red for kicks, yellow for snares, and green for shuffles. And then if there's any other extra slices, you can choose colours for them as well. So that's just a way of making it easier for yourself when you start rearranging everything. One thing I was thinking I could do is, because I'm going to be adding other kicks and snares to this, I was thinking about maybe turning down the kicks and snares a bit. So for example, this first kick, just crank it down by, I don't know, 4 dB, maybe even 5. Alright, I'll do 5. Now this sounds weird, obviously, when you play back the break after all the kicks and snares have been turned down by 5 dB. Then needless to say, it's going to sound completely weird. But don't forget, I will be layering my own kicks and snares with these. And once it's all layered up and it's all put together, it will actually sound good. So you're going to have to bear with me. So I'll just quickly turn these down. It's pretty easy to see which ones need turning down. And then we're going to draw for the additional kicks and snares. Now obviously there's various different ways you can do this. You've got the drum rack, which you can put all your samples into and program them. You can, the other day I was messing about with Impulse. I don't know if any of you guys are using Impulse, but it's a very simple drum machine. It's kind of like the drum rack, but really basic. And actually, if any of you guys out there are really new to Ableton Live and like super beginner level, I've got something coming up that's going to interest you. It's I'm going to get on Ableton Live Lite 12, and I'm going to show you how to use it in a really basic way. And I'll probably use Impulse to do the drums in that. So if you're someone who's new here and a beginner producer who's kind of struggling to get to grips with it, just subscribe to the channel, because very soon you're going to see my beginner tutorials. Alright, so got the break chopped up, I've turned down the kicks and snares, and it's time to add some additional kicks and snares. So I could just keep going with the audio way, you know, which is where I'm not going to use the drum rack or Impulse or anything like that. I'm just going to go to a sample pack and drag in some samples. So for example, maybe the crime wave kick could be good. So I need one there. And you're going to have to bear with me a second. Is it like that? Alright, now we need snares. I like to use that rooftop, but I'm not sure if this is the right type of tune for it. Maybe if I just turn it up a bit. Let's try this. Alright, so the pattern's right, but I'm not sure about these kicks. I might try there was another kick there that might sound better, which is called rack. So rack kick. Sounds alright. Anyone who's got any questions or anything, just let me know. And I'm going to press save. So basically what we've got so far is some chords that I've stolen from a dub tune. Big up Dennis. I've got the Hot Pants break chopped up, turned down the kicks and snares, put my own kicks and snares with it, and perhaps I'm just going to do a normal DNB pattern. So you know what I'll do? I'll leave that there. What I can do is actually just copy this over here, and then I can do the normal drum and bass pattern and then choose which one I prefer. So if I just quickly go into jungle breaks, this is one thing that is like could be a little tip for you, is that if you're not sure which one you're going to prefer, this one or this one, just like make another one over here. If that sounds better, ditch the first one. So I was starting off with the Hot Pants break. Where is it now? Hot Pants break. This time I'm going to use the first half of the Hot Pants break. So if you remember, I was using the second half last time. So the first part sounds more like a regular DNB beat, and it sounds like this. So if I just put the kicks and snares quickly onto the grid. And sometimes what you can do, if you want to really make things tight, you can make every other note on the grid like that, you know. No, it doesn't sound good. Ignore me. So it's totally up to you how much you want to tighten up the break. And you guys have probably heard of the think break. Maybe I'm going to add the think break as well. So yeah, I was turning down the kicks and snares by 5 dBs last time. So there. So how has everyone's weekend been? What did you get up to? I went to see a movie on Friday night called The Accountant 2. Have you heard of that? Anyone who's heard of The Accountant, let me know in the chat. Yeah, so chop that up. Let's have a listen. Alright, so it's, as I was saying before, it sounds weird when you get rid of those or turn down those kicks and snares, but then you add your own like this. So kick there, kick there. Big up Richie. Yeah, so The Accountant came out in 2016 and then they just brought out the sequel. It was alright, it was pretty good. I'd say the first one's better. But I really enjoyed going to see it in the cinema, you know. It's not something that you do every day. And it's just a bit of an experience in it to go and sit in the cinema. So, had a good weekend. So what I'm doing here is I've just turned down the Hot Pants break quite a bit. I also put it last because I'm just OCD about the order of things. It's got to go kick, snare, break like that, and then I'll put the reggae chords last. And in a bit, I'm going to show you how I organize everything, you know, into groups and stuff. Yeah, it's sad because like there's probably about on a Saturday night there was probably about 10 people, 12 people in the cinema, you know. And you'd expect it to be a bit more busy than that, so no, it's just because obviously everyone's got a massive TV in their living room with Netflix and everything. So I want to show you, just like to sort of switch it up a bit, I want to show you about sends and returns. So here, for people who don't know, these two over here on the right side where it says reverb and delay, these are return tracks, right? And they have, already by default, they have a reverb and a delay on them. So the reverb is the standard reverb. You can see that it's got a low cut and a high cut, which you can turn on and off. And by default, it's set to wet and dry 100%. And the reason is because you can decide how much you want to send stuff to that reverb unit. So you see here, you've got these A and B knobs. They are the sends, right? So here we've got the reggae chords. And what you can do is turn up send A. And as you can see now, we're getting level on the reverb channel, meaning that the scientist sample is now being sent to reverb. But what I like to do, especially on a tune like this, is I'm actually going to delete this reverb and I'm going to put the other one there, which is the hybrid reverb. So that's it's got a lot more options, right? So you can see here you've got halls, plates, springs, and when it comes to reggae, dub and all the rest of it, it's good to put it on a spring reverb, and then you've got all these different like old school spring, right? Now, as I was saying before, when you're using a reverb or a delay or something on a send, you need to make sure your wet and dry is on 100%. You don't want any dry signal coming through because you've already got your dry signal here, right? And then you choose how much you want to send the wet with this knob here. Shout out Aaron303 in the building. So I'm just sort of explaining sends and returns. So I've set up a hybrid reverb with old school spring reverb setting here. So that way if I play the reggae chords, and obviously you can hear that there's quite a bit of sort of lower mids in there. So one thing that I like to do, actually this isn't necessary. Why? Because if you look here, you've got these two tabs at the top. You've got reverb and then you've got EQ. So click the EQ and as you can see, it's already rolling off some of the low end. But I was noticing that maybe some of this area here around 200, 300 was coming through and sounding a bit too much. So I'm going to bring that right back. So let's have another listen. You're here now. I don't know what kind of speakers or headphones you're using, but if I play it and then press pause and you hear the tail, it's got a lot less of that lower mids in now, so that's going to be less intrusive when it comes to making a DNB tune. Now, Molod. Is it Molod or Molod? Yes, every time I do one of these live streams, as soon as it's finished, you're able to watch the entire thing on my channel. So on the B return, we've got a delay by default, right? Now, back in the day when these guys were making dub and stuff like that, they were using like a tape delay. And one thing you can do to sort of emulate that, you see how right now this is synced to the project, and right now it's on a third, right? And you can press this sync button so it goes to time, and then just make sure that they are actually showing the same time, or they could be different, but I like to have it still, so that they're basically matched. So let's put that one to 22.1 so that they're the same. 22.1 on both of them. Then press this link button, right? Now that's linked them both together so that whenever you move it, it's moving both. The point I'm trying to make here is that instead of it being perfectly in sync with the project, if you want to make it sound a bit more like old school dub, then you can put it to a millisecond value, which might not necessarily be a accurate fraction of the project BPM. And let's just do a little test. See what I mean? So obviously for the guys who've actually heard dub before, you probably recognise that that's sounding a lot more like the kind of delays that they have in dub, where it's not like perfectly in sync with the drums of the track. It's just like kind of in the right ballpark. One thing you can do, check this out. So we've got A and B, 2 return tracks, right? But what about if I put them both together? So what about if I put this delay unit onto A with the reverb, so it's delay and reverb in one, and then just delete B return. Now we've just got one, and as you see on each channel now we've only got the A send. So that was just a bit of an experiment to show you, but I'm going to actually undo that and put it back to A and B. But the reason why I showed you that is because if you've ever heard of the Roland Space Echo, what that is it's both in one. It's a reverb and delay unit, tape delay. So if you want to try and make your own sort of Roland Space Echo using Ableton Live stock effects, what you can do is just put a delay and a reverb on one send, one return. Anyway, that was just a little bit about sends and returns. Let's get back to making the DNB drums. So what you can do is you can put some hi-hats with it, and in one of the sample packs I've just got this hi-hat loop that I sometimes like to use. You see this? Obviously it's very, very slow. What you can do is make sure warping's turned on. Grab the end of it and hold shift and then just go like this. And then you can even put it double that, so it's like this. And then you might notice there's quite a lot of mids there. So if I just get the EQ, put that on there and then sort of scoop out everything below 1K or even higher, just to add something to the very top end, you know. So here it is with the hot pants, or with everything. Big up Molod. Yeah, just check it out later, man. Take your time. So now that we've got sort of 4 drum elements, what I like to do is to keep things organized, click the top one and hold down shift and then click the bottom one. So they're all highlighted like that. And then Command and G, that groups it together. Command and R to rename it. And then just call that drums. And for the guys who watch my channel, you'll know that I always use capital letters for a group. And then I use just normal letters for normal tracks. So I'm going to simplify these and just call it kick, snare, hot pants, and hats. So how are these drums sounding? The hi-hats, you know, it's one of them things where a little goes a long way. So I'm going to turn it down. And what you want to do is turn it on and off and see if it's actually adding something good or bad. So here's without it, and then I add it in. So you can see that it's just sprinkling a little bit of spice on the top end, but without being, you know, you need to make sure that it's not just intrusive and sounding horrible. So one thing you can do now that you've got a little drums loop going is add a bit of glue compressor. And I like to just make the needle move just a little bit. See that? So you could say that it's like 0.8 dB of gain reduction. And then what else could we put on there? Drum bus. So the drum bus, when you bring it in, it makes your drums louder. So watch this, yeah? Let me turn off the drum bus. Look at the little meter on the drums group and see where it's hitting up to. Minus 2.2, right? I brought in that drum bus. Instantly. Minus 0. So that added an extra 2 dB, which we need to bring back down again. So the idea isn't, with these effects, the idea isn't just to make your drums physically louder. It's just to make them sound louder, right? So bring it down on the trim, and then you can do a bit of an A-B comparison to see whether it's just sounding fatter or not. If you want to keep number, hashtag could be helpful, says Dennis. So is that when you're doing your renaming and you put a hashtag there? Like that. Oh yeah. So shout out Dennis Helfrich, because he's just said that if you put a hashtag there, it brings the number. So Command and R to rename it, and then you just put the little hashtag and the space, and then when you click off it, look, bling, that just brings back the number. Very helpful tip. Right, so that's the drum bus. Let me just show you the drum bus. For the guys who've never used it and don't know much about it, we'll just go through it really quickly. So starting from the left side, you've got a drive knob, and this is basically adding a bit of overdrive and distortion, you know. You've got soft, medium, hard. You can choose what kind of distortion you want. The trim is what I just used to turn it down a bit. Comp, that's actually applying some compression, but I'm not going to use that because I like to use a separate compressor. Then we've got crunch, which is another type of distortion. Let's have a listen to how that sounds. But again, when you turn up the crunch, you do need to watch out for the levels and adjust the trim accordingly. So if you turn up the crunch too much, it's going to get too not only it's going to get crunchy, it's going to add physical level, and then you're going to need to bring it back down again by the trim so that you can compare the before and after. All right, then this damp is another one that you really need to watch out for, and I've considered doing a separate video about the drum bus. Maybe I will. This dampen knob, you can see how it says 9.20 kilohertz. What that's doing is actually dampening the top end of your drums. So listen what happens. Right, I'm going to just turn that up to 20 kilohertz and then gradually bring it back down to 9. And I'll take it a bit further just to demonstrate the point. You hear how that's totally just dampening off the top end of the drums. And you could say that if you've happened to have made some drums that are actually a bit too much in the top end, then this is really useful. But you do need to use it consciously, you know, be aware of what you're doing, because you might not be aware that you're actually just like rolling off a load of the top end of your drums, which you might have worked hard to try and make sound bright and stuff, you know. Then we got this transients control. So the way how I understand it is if you turn it one way, it's going to make it's going to make it more transient-y, and it's going to, like, after every transient, it's going to fade it out. And then if you turn it the other way, it's actually going to do the opposite, and it's going to make the hits longer. So you hear if I turn it to the left, then all you're getting is transients, and then it's sort of fading it out after each one. But watch out for your levels again. I'm going to turn this trim down a bit. So look at that. Yeah, do you hear how it's really just cutting each one off right after each drum hit? Like after the kick, after the snare, after everything else. It's just abruptly cutting it off. And a lot of those shuffles are getting totally dampened. And then I'm sure if I take it the other way, it's going to do the opposite, which is going to be, it's going to be bringing up the shuffles. So that's going to be taming the transients and like, allowing all the extra shuffles and stuff to come through. That was actually pretty good. If you want your drums to sound more breakbeaty, if that's even a word, then you can turn this up a bit, and it's going to kind of emphasize all of those little extra ghost snares and stuff in between. And what you can do is, whenever you're using something like this, it's a good idea to use this little on-off control in the top left and turn it on and off and do a little A-B comparison. So here's the drums before I put the drum bus on. And then here is with the drum bus. I actually quite like it. It's like controlling them quite well. And one thing you can do is if you want to do that A-B comparison with a lot of different things, so click your first effect, hold down the shift button and click your last effect. In this case I've only got two, but we've highlighted them both, right? Command and G, and just like before when we made a group of tracks, you can also make a group of audio effects, and it's called an audio effect rack. Now they're all together, and you'll notice that there's an extra on-off button over here on the left, which will turn off the whole thing. So now that I can do my little A-B comparison with just raw drums, and then turn this on, and it's going to turn on the glue compressor and drum bus together. You can really hear that damp thing kind of taking away, or it's like taming those hi-hats that I added. But in a very pleasant way. I mean, it's like, you know, I was saying before, it's like you really need to use them sparingly, and adding that drum bus and doing that whole dampening thing has made it even more sparing. So that's great. Another thing I like to add is the tape saturation, which I got from Air Windows, and it's called To Tape 8. All right, so just drag that in there, and I usually use the same settings, so it's like just dial it in quickly. Flutter. So the first time I ever did this, I used Flutter, and it made some weird stuff go on in the stereo. Like, what he's done is he's programmed this to be like a real tape machine. And in a real tape machine, sometimes if it's getting a bit old, it can sort of just snag on one side of the left and right. So then they just go out of time for a split second. And he has emulated that to perfection. When I say he, I'm talking about this guy called Chris from Air Windows. So big up Chris. He is an absolute genius when it comes to making plugins, and he gives them away for free or on a donation basis. So what you can do is you can sign up to his Patreon as a way of saying thank you, and he allows you to download all of his plugins for free. So he's saying, is it Lloyd? He's saying you can do this by pressing 0. So are you talking about turning it on and off? Oh yeah. So you click your audio effects rack, press the 0 button, you can do your little A-B comparison that way. Big up, man. Thank you, Lloyd. I love it when you guys jump in the chat and give extra tips. That's what it's all about. So to tape 8, yeah, I was just saying the flutter control, I turn that off. Now if you're putting this on some other element, maybe it would be good to have that on, but when it's on your main drum bus, needless to say, you don't want them to just be randomly going out of time with each other on the left and right channels. So I turn that to 0. Then there's this other one called head bump. This adds a bass boost at a certain frequency, and in this case you can see its head frequency is 68.7 Hertz. So that's going to add a bass boost at 68 Hertz, which apparently sounds like something that the head of a tape machine does. But in my case, I like to turn that off, because if I'm going to be boosting the bass at 68 Hertz, I'd prefer to do it with a normal EQ and not with this plugin. What I really want from this plugin is for it to give me some tape saturation. So in that case, I'm going to turn the input all the way up, adjust the output accordingly, and remember before I was doing the A and B comparison. So in this case, let me play the drums. Hitting up to -2.6, right? Turn the tape saturation on. And perhaps I've took it a bit far. And try and make it up to -2 again, so that we've got apples to apples comparison. And then we can do Lloyd's little trick and use the 0 button now. So you see how before, with everything turned off, it's hitting up to pretty much 0, right, or 0.9. Now when I turn this on, everything's sounding so much fatter, but it's actually hitting up to -2.3, which is quite a lot lower. So we've gained headroom, we've made it fatter, and when it comes to making this track loud and punchy at the end with mastering and stuff, we've already done a big part of it by doing all this. We've also made it sound quite crunchy, and some might say perhaps a little bit too much. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. Have I taken it too far with the crunchy drums, or do they sound pretty good? Alright, here's the Scientist reggae sample back again. And what you can do later on is automate these A and B to sort of just momentarily go up like that, like this. Alright, so, you know, before I was reading you a bit of a description, so let's go back to it. I'm going to read you, some of you guys weren't here at the beginning, so I'm going to start reading this again. Emerging around the mid-2000s, Dubwise drum and bass is a style of drum and bass that implements reggae and dub influences with DNB rhythms and production. Though it does share some parallels with Ragga Jungle, which similarly mixes jungle with influences of reggae and dub, it ultimately utilises newer production techniques of post-2000s DNB, less chaotic and noisy drum beats, more refined sampling, cleaner mixing, and generally less rave elements, making it distinct from its predecessor's sound. So, essentially this is what I'm trying to do today, you know. It's kind of Ragga Jungle, but much cleaner, much newer sounding and stuff like that. But there are no rules, so if the tune ends up sounding more like an old school Ragga Jungle tune, so be it, you know what I mean? And I feel like the hot pants break might need some work to make it sound a bit cleaner. Not cleaner, but just taking up less space and stuff. So let's put an EQ8 on it, take out some of the low end. So, with that being said, you know I love to use that 808, so I'm going to have to bring it in, but we can try some other bass lines in a bit. Well, we'll be using some 808 at least, so let's just get that out of the way. So instruments, simpler. You've seen me do this before, but some of you are new here, so I'm just going to quickly go through it. So I keep mine in this folder here called 808. And I don't know if any of you guys, shout out Tara Bass, welcome man. So I'm going to show you what we've done so far, Tara Bass, just so you're up to speed. What we've got is the drums group, kick, snare, hot pants break, hi-hats. I've put the glue compressor, drum bus and tape saturation on. So here's the drums so far. So it's a combination of the drive from the drum bus and some drive from the tape saturation, which is making it sound pretty gritty, but I like it so far. And then right at the beginning I was sampling this dub tune from King Tubby and Scientist called Scientist's Ancient Dub, and it sounds like this. And one guy was scolding me the other week about that I should use Complex Pro algorithm. In fact, this isn't even warped. One bit of it wasn't warped. So let's try it with Complex Pro and see if that sounds any better. I mean, to me, it's pretty difficult to tell the difference between Complex and Complex Pro, but I mean, the way how I understand it is Complex Pro uses more CPU power, but in today's modern era with better computers, I don't think that really even matters, you know. As you can see in the top right, you've got a CPU meter, and right now it's on 0 or 1%, and when everything's playing, all right, we're hitting up to 15 or 16%, so you can just keep your eye on that, you know. I mean, I don't know if I'm stating the obvious here, but if your CPU meter is hitting to like 80, 90%, maybe you could start thinking about trying to do certain measures to make it use less. But if you're making a tune and it's only hitting to 20%, then nothing to worry about, is there? So, got the super dope 808, and I was saying, I always say this, that like, this isn't in perfect tune. And I'm kind of assuming that the guitarists and keyboard players and stuff in the Scientist tune were actually playing to proper pitch. You know, I assume they've tuned their guitars. So in that case, it's probably best if I put this to perfect tune. Now, I'm just going to show for the people who might be new here, I'm going to show what I usually do here, and it's go to audio effects, get the tuner, put that after your simpler, and then press a C on the keyboard, and then like just play with this transpose and detune until it says a perfect C. Alright, then you can delete the tuner again after, and it's already in perfect tune. So it's just a little tip for you. Now, I don't know if any of you guys saw the latest video that I made, which was remaking DJ Zink's tune. One thing that I noticed when I was making that is actually it sounded better and way more authentic when I didn't tune the 808 and just left it how it was. So going back to like what is Dubwise, and it was going on about how it's more modern production techniques and it's sounding a lot cleaner and more 21st century. Maybe it's a good idea to tune your 808, but if you're trying to recreate something from the mid-90s, feel free to not tune it. So let's have a listen to them chords again. So I feel like it's an E. So let's try this. Alright. I want to make it go ba-dum ba-dum bum. So sometimes I feel like I repeat myself the same every week, but you know, when you're making a bass line, it's good to put your spectrum analyzer on there and see what sort of notes you're hitting. So that's way too high, that's way too high, so this whole thing needs to go down. And you hear at the beginning of the 808 you've got that little bit that's like kicking. And for the people who have kind of crap speakers, that's probably all you can hear. So I'm going to make it just disappear now. So if you turn up that attack on the simpler, you've got this attack knob, right? Crank that up to between 30 and 40 to take away that click at the beginning. And for the whack speaker crew now, you're probably hearing absolutely nothing, but don't worry, because I'm going to whack the saturator on here. And I've spoken about this before, right? If you make two notes run into each other, they make a kind of weird little click. And what I like to do is, you see right here, just going to bring that back just a touch so that they're not really running into each other anymore. Same again with the second one. Wait. So anyway, right at the beginning, yeah, I made the pattern slightly different. So here's the drums that we've just made now. And right at the beginning, the ones I made were like this. So let's have a vote out of the people that are actually in the chat. Who's saying... So we're going to say drums 1 is the ones that's like the kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. And then drums 2 is the more standard drum and bass pattern. Kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. Right? So this is drums 2. All right, drums 1 is like this. This is more... I'd say this is sounding more like Dubwise, you know? And then this is drums 2. Actually, you know what? Vote away, but I do actually, me personally, I kind of prefer drums 1 now. It's just that maybe they were sounding, when I first made them, I hadn't really done the high passing on the hot pants break yet, so it wasn't sounding as clean and stuff, but now I've sort of done a bit of sorting out, it actually sounds better. So, here's drums 1. Everyone's saying drums 1. Tara Bass says drums 2. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to use both, but I was thinking, you know, with the bass is going, 2 fits better with the rhythm. Let's have a listen. What Tara Bass is saying basically is that the snare goes well with the scientist. It's every time it goes jink, jink, the snare is with it, you know? That's true. And then this one. So this is something I've definitely thought about before. Does it really matter if your snare hits at the same time as the reggae skank kind of sound? Big up Roughneck, big up Future World Machines, shout out Richie, ZXY, Tara Bass, Dennis Healthrich, sorry. And big up the crew, big up Lloyd, everyone who's locked in, big up everyone who's watching this back later. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, giving your 2 cents and getting involved interactively. So anyway, what I was thinking, right, we're going to use both of the drums. I think that's probably the best option. But for these ones, I'm going to move them later, and we're just going to concentrate on this here. And what I want to do is, on the bass line, it goes do-dum, do-dum, dum. On the second one, I want to make it go do-dum, do-dum, dum. Up to the E, which is it's already in E. All right, so it sounds like this. Right, we're gonna half and half together. So that would be like how the hot pants break is in the first place. So what the hot pants break does, it does the first half of this, drums 2, and then the second half is drums 1, like this. And if I bring the bass over as well, this is what the hot pants does in its original form. No, it's not like that, is it? Because that's doing kind of 2 bars of each, and the hot pants is doing 1 bar of each. So what it would be is this. For the sake of demonstration, what it would be is this. This is like the hot pants. Before I was saying you can crank up these sends and then just bring in the reggae bit just for a split second like that. Don't forget to hit save, guys. Command and S. Make sure you save periodically. And I don't know if you guys have ever had it where you've like worked and then it crashes, but it is heartbreaking. So anyway, there's this instrument called a melodica, right? And in dub music, they use the melodica a lot. There's this guy called Augustus Pablo, and he's a old school dub guy who essentially he makes like dub tracks and then he plays over it with melodica, and that's how I first got into it. And I don't know if you guys like the sound of melodica, but I'm going to bring one in. So if I go to user library and sampler, here's one I made earlier. So what I've done here is I've actually played the melodica and played every note and recorded it. Then with those notes, I've put them into the sampler and put each note onto each note, so that now that I can play on my MIDI keyboard here. And it's just like I'm playing my real melodica, which is currently in storage gathering dust. I'm glad I recorded it so that I can just play the computer version, you know. So before I go any further, one thing I'm going to do is put some effects onto it because it's sounding dry as hell. So I'm going to put a bit of delay on it. Again, I'm going to use the hybrid reverb. Put it on spring mode. Might as well just go with the old school spring again. Listen to this now. So, obviously, when it comes to making Dubwise tunes, it's good to know a reggae singer who's going to put the vocal down for you, or to come with a reggae vocal of some sort. But right now, I don't have anything like that. And what I like to sometimes do is go for the Augustus Pablo technique, which is just to kind of play a little melodica melody over part of the tune. And then obviously just add far too much reverb and delay, and then make it drop into the drums and bass. Sorry, excuse me. Tara Bass is saying UB40. What, just make a red wine remix? Shout out Paul K in the chat. Thanks for joining, man. So where we're up to now is we've got a basic loop, 4 bars, bit of drum and bass drums. We've got Scientist and King Tubby with some reggae chords. We've got the 808 super dope bass line. And I was thinking about, you know, it's kind of limiting using the computer MIDI keyboard. But can just sort of draw it in on the piano roll, you know. So let me just unsolo this. I was thinking, doo-dum, doo-dum, dum. Just bear with me a sec. I want to make it go. Dum dum dum. It's annoying having to go all the way from the beginning. You know what I'll do? I'll just make it from here. This one goes out to Augustus Pablo. And I think we're going to need even more reverb and delay on it. Shout out Future World Machines. Have you guys heard of Augustus Pablo before? Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double the whole thing. Wait. And on the second time around, what I need to do is close this window of the sampler. There we go. On the second time. Alright, there we go. Goes like this. Out to Future World Machines. There's already... Do you mean the actual echo? I've never really used that echo. There's like a type of delay in Ableton Live called the echo, but I'm not really sure how it's different from a normal delay. But anyway, let's put it on there. There's no time like the present to have an experiment with this. Look at that. It's a very complex delay. And I'll turn off the other delay that I already had on there and try this one instead. Melodica mono. Yeah, the melodica's in mono originally, but I guess when you put some like spring reverb and this echo on it and stuff, it might make some kind of stereo effects on it, but the original thing is in mono. I just recorded it with SM57. Shout out the GOS, the GOS. in the building. So Richie, Augustus Pablo, I was saying before, he's like in the 70s when like King Tubby and these kind of guys were coming out with dub. So for the guys that don't know what dub is basically a guy on a mixing desk is like kind of making this live performance on the mixing desk. And what they do is they get a reggae track and they've got all of the multi-tracks. So you've got all the different drums, you've got the bass, you've got the different guys going jink, jink with the guitar and the organ and the piano and all the rest of it, you know. And you've got the normal vocals, the backing vocals, everything all on separate tracks. And then what the guy does on this mixing desk is like bringing in parts, taking parts out, sending parts to the reverb and delay. And they used to have this like unit called the Roland Space Echo, which is like a tape delay and reverb in one. Send stuff to that. Obviously, a lot of it was emphasizing the bass and making the bass louder than it usually would in the reggae track. And a lot of the time they would just chop out everything and just have drums and bass, and you'd even have a guy going strictly drum and bass. And then obviously you've probably heard loads of them kind of samples in drum and bass music, you know. So where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so one of the guys, Augustus Pablo, on the dub scene was a guy who essentially he was making this dub, but he'd also play the melodica over the top of it. So you'd have like these super bass heavy dub tracks that they would play on Jamaican sound systems, and then as it's playing, then Augustus Pablo would be there playing his melodica over the top of it, and he was the one who I'm basically influenced by. When I make tracks like this and I have the melodica going, it's sort of a nod to that Augustus Pablo style dub. So what we're going to do is in a bit we're going to build up the track. We're going to do the arrangement, and there's going to be some kind of more dub style drums in the beginning, and it's going to be just like a dub tune, and then suddenly after a while it's going to drop into actual DNB drums, and perhaps I'll make some other bass lines and stuff. So, as far as I know, Ableton Live doesn't have its own tape echo, but what you can do, and I was saying this before you got here, Future World Machines, is that you can put your delay unit onto, instead of sync, you can press this button here and put it to time, and then you can just choose a certain amount of milliseconds, and that makes it so that it's not quite as accurate in terms of timing, which sort of mimics the way how a tape echo sort of just does its thing and loops around, and it's not necessarily in time with the project. I do actually, on my other laptop, I have a Space Echo plugin, emulation. It looks exactly like the front of a Roland Space Echo, and it sounds like one too. But when I got my new laptop and I tried to move it across, it was like talking about my serial number. Like I guess I have to email the company and just tell them, look, I got a new laptop, I want to move this plugin across, and you need to authorize it. Maybe you're only allowed to authorize it on one laptop at a time or something like that, but haven't got around to doing it. That's my bad, because I really should have had that ready for today's tutorial. But we can do it with Ableton stock plugins, you know. You just need to like add a load of saturation and grit everything up. So, as I was saying before, the timing of the thing is in milliseconds, and then you obviously have to do some trial and error to get it in the right ballpark. But the idea is to get it sounding, you know, when it's on sync mode, and usually a third, or when you put it on number 3, that's when it's sounding very kind of reggae-ish. And if you go to timing, you want to get it somewhere in that ballpark, but not bang on. Like that. So for the guys that don't know, the delay, the feedback is how many of those repeats you're going to get. So it repeats and repeats and repeats. You know, if you crank it up to 95, you'll notice how it doesn't let you go to 100% on this stock delay. And the reason why is because if you put it onto 100%, it will literally just keep echoing forever. And if you get repeats stacking on top of each other, then they will make it clip as well. The one that I've got that's like a space echo doesn't have that limitation, so it will let you stack the repeats, and then very quickly it'll just start absolutely distorting, because it's just you know, it's stacking more and more and more and more audio on top of each other. So for that reason, that's why the feedback only goes up to 95%, in case you've ever wondered. Shout out Dennis. That's exactly what I'm currently doing. So I've got delay on send B. I've cranked up the send. I've cranked up the feedback. And then what I'm doing is I'm literally just turning on the reggae chords with this button here, just for a split second, to make it go like this. And for the guys that don't know, ping pong delay is when you make it makes it go from left, right, like this. If you're wearing headphones now, you'll hear it ping ponging back and forth between the left and right channels. Tara Bass is saying ping pong on. Alright, good shout. Alright, so we've got the chords, we've got one melody. I think it's before we start doing the arrangement, we're probably going to need some other things, right? So let me get just go for some other instruments. So going to go into the instruments section here and instrument rack. If I go to piano and keys, hopefully there's some organs. Yeah, there's. So the organs we got to choose from are angry, funky, house, plus synth rough, transistor series. So I mean, organ funky is pretty much sounding like the most appropriate one, so let's try that. And then to make it sound a bit more like it's from the 70s or something, I think I'm going to put some saturation on it. Maybe that's too much. you know. So when you want to, when you've chosen an instrument and you want to put in some notes, you've got a couple of different options of how to do it, right? One thing you can do is you make sure this little red button here is armed. So that's called the arming the track, right? So you click that and you've armed the track. What that means is whenever you play your MIDI keyboard, it's going to play that channel. You can see that if I arm the melodica instead and turn it on, it plays that instead. So whichever one you've pressed this little red button on is the one your MIDI keyboard is going to play. Now, if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, don't worry about it, because all you have to do is go here to Options and Computer MIDI Keyboard, and now your actual keyboard of your laptop or desktop or whatever computer you've got is now an actual keyboard for playing music on. Now, it's not quite as good because it's got no velocity sensitivity, and what that means is there's no difference between hitting it hard or soft, you know. It's always just going to be medium, basically. But what you can do is you can play it, and then later you can go in and change your velocities, and I'll show you how to do that. So with the melodica, just pretend that I've just recorded this in using my keyboard, even though I actually drew these notes in. But if we go down here to the bottom and you see velocity, and then it's got all these values, and if it's looking a bit too small and fiddly, all you do is this, drag it upwards and get a much better view of what's going on. Now this scale goes from 1 to 127, and you can see that when you just draw notes in, it just defaults them to 100, which is, you could say it's like around 3/4 of the way up. Now certain instruments within Ableton Live, whether they're multi-sampled or whether they are synthesizers, they have what's called velocity sensitivity, which means that you can, if you play the notes harder, it'll play a slightly different sound and it'll make it sound harder, you know. Like when something's been multi-sampled, what they do is they sample it at all different velocities. So for example, a piano, what they'll do is they'll sample every single key of a piano soft, like someone playing it very gently, and then they'll sample every single key of the piano a bit harder, and then every single key even harder, and then they'll have these different levels, you know. And that way when you play it on a MIDI keyboard, you can kind of mimic, or it will mimic, you being able to play a real piano, if I'm making any sense here, you know. And it's not just with a MIDI keyboard. You can also draw in the notes. So I could draw in a note here, and then on this velocity I could say, well, I want that to be really hard, or I want that to be quite soft, and you just bring this up and down, you know. So that's a little bit about velocity. So Future World Machines is correct. He says keyboard shortcuts don't work when using the computer as a MIDI keyboard. So what you have to do as a little workaround is keep going up here to Options. You turn on your computer MIDI keyboard, you play it a bit. Once you've recorded your bit in, you just go back up here and turn it back off again. So you might find that annoying. If you find that too annoying to deal with, then obviously you're probably the type of person that should buy a MIDI keyboard and have it separate. But some people just don't have the space on their desk, or some people might just be kind of, you know, not that in the money right now, or they have other things they need to spend their money on, like have a baby or whatever. Can't be spending a couple of £100 on a MIDI keyboard. So just thought I'd give you a free way of doing it with your computer keyboard. And me personally, I have to admit to you that I've got the Ableton Push, which I could be playing my notes into. I don't even have it plugged in. Why? Because it takes up loads of space on the desk. And I probably should have it plugged in more often, to be honest. But half of the time I just use the MIDI keyboard or just draw notes in. So with that being said, we've got the organ. Let me just put a bit of EQ on the Scientist sample. Do do doom. Maybe we should go. Ba do doom doom. Bo do 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 do. I always find if you shouldn't really play an organ too high up the keyboard, to be honest. It's got to be around here. Do you know what I mean? No, it's too cheesy. Sorry, guys. Anyway, let's have a listen with the drums and bass. The idea is there's going to be a bit of a cheesy melody, but then it's going to drop in, you know, it's going to drop into drums and bass. So you get that sort of contrast. Good go. Let me know if you think it's just way too cheesy. Right, I'm going to draw it in. So the blurring needs to be this end. Dun 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 dun. Where is it? You know, we're going to have some cheesy bits and we're going to have some less cheesy bits, alright? So if you think it's just sounding way too corny right now, you just have to bear with me. I think it's going to go do-do-do. Put the notes a bit off. That's a good shout. Certain notes were supposed to be longer. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry, Dennis. The effects are going to come in a second. You know. So going back to Tara Bass's suggestion, it might actually be a good idea for me to just grab the whole lot and just go like that. So I was saying before, like, what dub is basically they take a reggae tune and then they deconstruct it on a mixing desk, right? And they bring parts out, they bring parts back in, they send parts to the sends and returns, and what they start off with is a fully fledged reggae tune, and then they deconstruct it and put it back together in a different way. So in order for me to do this, to make something that sounds dubby, what I really need is a full reggae tune to start with, you know, which is what I'm basically doing now, building up these little melodies and stuff. And then you're going to hear, by the time this is finished, that they're just going to come in for a split second, and then I'm just going to add way too much reverb and delay and just make them tail off. And it's going to actually sound pretty good. Shout out, Paul. Oh, thank you, Tara Bass. I really appreciate that, man. For the ones that are watching this back, Tara Base just donated €5 and said, keep going. So that's exactly what we're going to do. You know, I really appreciate that. And that's just like, I mean, I already was going to keep going, but it's just like a bit of extra incentive, you know what I mean? So what are we on? Like, it's saying 101 minutes. So that's like an hour and 40 now. Yeah, an hour and 40 minutes so far. So what we've got so far for the people that have just joined us, I was banging on about this description. I might as well just bring it back up one more time. So, emerging around the mid-2000s, Dubwise drum and bass is a style of drum and bass that implements reggae dub influences with DNB rhythms and production. Though it does share some parallels with Ragga Jungle, which similarly mixes jungle with influences of reggae and dub, it ultimately utilises newer production techniques of post-2000s DNB. Less chaotic and noisy drum beats, more refined sampling, cleaner mixing, and generally less rave elements, making it distinct from its predecessor sound. So you could say that it's a direct descendant from Ragga Jungle, but it's also a descendant of drum and bass, and it's also just like its own thing, which is taken a lot from reggae. It's basically reggae with faster drums, right? I want to big up everyone who's locked in, everyone who's watching this back, and I especially want to big up the guys who keep coming back on a weekly basis. So if you're new here, my name's DJ Graish. I'm originally from England, but I live in Barcelona, Spain, and I've been producing electronic music since 2008. I started off with dubstep. I went on to some kind of like down-tempo jungle. The whole time I was playing drum and bass, by the way. So as a DJ, my record collection is drum and bass, mainly from the late 90s. And if you saw recently, I did a remake of the Ready or Not remix by DJ Zinc and sort of broke down the track and showed you where all the samples and stuff are from. That's the exact type of music that I play as a DJ, you know. And I used to have the white label vinyl. In fact, I did actually go to where my records are. Yeah, let me just change the camera angle a second, because while I'm waffling, I might as well just put this full screen for a sec. Yeah, so what I was going to say is, I'm living in this tiny apartment, right? And I've got this storage unit, which is where all of my stuff is, including my turntables and my records. So when I was making the Ready or Not video, I thought to myself, well, it'd be good to have a copy of the record and I can sort of show it to the camera like that, you know. So I went to look through all my old records and I was gutted to find out that I don't have it anymore, and I don't know where it went. I must have left it at a rave somewhere, or maybe some cheeky DJ has stolen it off me, or I was probably just really drunk in the rave and just like left it on the turntable or something like that, you know, over the years. And I've just not really even been playing vinyl for so long that I didn't even notice it was gone. So that was a bit of a gutter. But as you saw in the video, yeah, Zinc left a comment, and that just absolutely made my day yesterday. When I saw that he'd responded, and the fact that he said that I got it spot on, it was just like, I couldn't believe it, man. Just absolutely made my day. But as you saw in the video, Ready or Not is now available on vinyl on Zinc's own Bandcamp for £15. So if you're like me and you happen to have misplaced your old copy, or you never had one in the first place, I think it's a great time to be able to buy it, because he was saying, in preparation for that video, I was doing a lot of research, right? And I was just watching all of his videos on Facebook, on YouTube, even on TikTok. I've never been a TikToker, but you know, you can just find TikTok videos and watch them just through Googling it. And he was saying that he's had it remastered professionally, you know, modern day master. So if you buy the one from his Bandcamp, it will be probably a better sounding master. And big up Jason's story. So where was I going with all this? Yeah, so unfortunately, I looked for my copy of Ready or Not, and it's gone. I don't have it anymore, so I'm going to have to buy the new remastered version. But I have to say that, you know, anyone who DJs will know that records sometimes get warped and they don't play as well anymore. And my copy of Ready or Not was a bit sketchy. Like, it played, and I used to play it at home, but I wouldn't really trust it out at the rave because it was a little bit dish shaped, and as it was going round, the needle was sort of going up and down like this, you know, and I was like thinking that's probably making it more likely that the needle's just going to jump out of the groove, and I'm like mid beat matching and I'm just going to look like an idiot, so I never played it. Anyway, get yourself a copy. I'm going to get myself a copy. I don't know, he was saying if you saw the Bandcamp, it said that he can't ship them to Ireland, and I'm not sure if it's the same with other countries. Maybe it's best to... I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but maybe it's best if I get that ordered to my dad's address in the UK and then just go and pick it up. So Jason, since you've just joined us, I'm just going to talk to you about what we've made so far. So we've got... This is supposed to be a Dubwise tune, you know. So what I've done is I've made these drums. We've got the glue compressor, the drum bus, the tape saturation. It's mainly just some kicks, snares and hot pants break and some hi-hats. Then the main sample of this so far is this Scientist reggae chords that go like this. Oh, Jason's already been here for a while. Well, anyone who's just joined us, this is what we've got so far. So we got Scientist reggae chords taken directly from a dub tune. So this is the cool thing about dub tunes, is that I was saying before that like they cut things out, they bring things back in, and sometimes they drop it down so it's just the chords, and then you can just cheekily sample them, you know. There's other parts where they just drop everything else out, and maybe you just get a little bit of saxophone by itself. And shout out 010101 etc. saying that I should make some dark garage. Yeah, well up for it. When I started, I was making dubstep, and I also have made... I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned it on these live streams, but I actually used to be in a grime group, well, hip hop and grime, with a load of MCs that were like rapping over hip hop, and also like I was making loads of grime instrumentals. So if any of you guys are interested in learning how to make grime instrumentals, just let me know, because I could definitely do a tutorial about that too. So anyway, going back to this, so we've got the Scientist tune, we've got the reggae chords, and I was saying that this melodica, what I did is I sampled every note of my own melodica and put it into a sampler, and it looks like this. So I don't know if you've ever seen what it looks like when you do the zone thing with a sampler, but like each one of these is a sample, right? And you can see if I go down the list, they all look different in the sampler, right? They're all different samples, and each one of them is just a note of the melodica. And then you put them on the keyboard here, so they're at the corresponding note. And that means that when you play it, if I just turn on the computer MIDI keyboard and arm this track, I'll be able to actually play the melodica. Wait, because it's soloed. See what I mean? So I've sampled every note of my own melodica, and now I can just play it on my keyboard. And just like my turntables and records, the melodica is now gathering dust in the storage unit. But at least I can still play it here within the sampler, so that's pretty cool. So all together, the drums, the 808, the reggae chords, and the melodica sound like this. And I was thinking we could do some other like more interesting bass in a bit, but let me just quickly show you the cheesy organ thing I've done as well. Sounds like this. Siebes in the building. So I want to big up Jason Story and Siebes. They are the members of the Graish Nation. So Graish Nation is the membership of this channel. So if you're enjoying this video and you're learning something, this live stream I should say, consider joining the Graish Nation, because we have these private meetings on Zoom, or the last one was actually on Discord. And we have a private Discord server where you can get involved, and we share tips and tricks and show each other our tunes and, you know, give feedback and all the rest of it. So if it sounds like something you're interested in, become a member of Graish Nation. And Jason Story saying he might suggest some dub sirens. I think that's an absolute brilliant idea. So big up Dennis. Thank you for joining, man. And I hope to see you next Sunday, because I do these live streams every Sunday evening. Oh, sorry to hear that, Paul. Yeah, I was a drinker. I quit 2.5 years ago, though, so the story of me losing my record in the rave was an old one, but I'm not really doing it. I'm not drinking anything, you know. I haven't touched a drop in 2.5 years. But yeah, I used to be pretty messy. So, Jason Story was talking about dub sirens, and I think it's a brilliant idea. So what we can do is we can put a dub siren into a simpler, and then just like they would do at like a reggae dance, you can just fire it off whenever you want. You know, I was saying this in the comments of one of my videos when the guy was asking me, what was that sound? And I was sort of explaining what a dub siren was, and just saying, like, when it's the drop, you know, like, I'd say dub's probably the original genre that had drops, you know what I mean? So they build it up with just some, like, instruments and stuff, and then suddenly it just drops into drums and bass, and everyone goes mad. So when it's the drop, the sound system will have this little basic synthesizer, which essentially it's just making these little siren sounds, and then they run it through loads of reverb and delay and just sort of play it over the top of the music. So you hear that? So this folder here, it's just full of them. In fact, there's all sorts in here, not just dub sirens. I could use some of these rolls as well. Yeah, it's good that you guys are talking about this. So for the people who are watching this back who don't know what's going on in the chat, there's basically a little bit of a discussion about alcoholism and, you know, going through tough times and stuff. And, you know, it's like sometimes we don't talk about it enough, and it's good to have the discussion about it. So if you're someone who's struggling, just get involved in this live stream. And I think learning how to make music is a good outlet as well, especially if you're someone who's trying to quit, like drinking, doing drugs or smoking or anything like that. Just it's good to have a creative outlet and get into something, you know, and really just put your time into that. And I have to say that during my years when I was drinking way too much, I don't think I was producing anywhere near as much music. So good to give it up and just like get on it with the music. See, this is the type of thing. And then they just let that off on the drop. And then do a load of toasting. That was the one that the guy was asking me about. What was that sound? It was DS5. See what I mean? So there's absolutely tons of them, and I could be here all day just going through them. Sometimes it's good to just make a real quick decision, be like, all right, that's the one I'm using. Know what I mean? So we've got, and by the way, if you notice, each one is AIF and MP3. Now, I much prefer to use WAVs, but I think AIF is like lossless quality, just like a WAV. So if you've got the choice of AIF or MP3, make sure you choose the AIF, because that's the one that's basically like lossless quality. This is going to turn into a bit of an AA meeting, isn't it? In fact, that'd actually be a great thing to do. Turn up to AA meeting and just be like, right, who wants to learn how to make drum and bass? Alright, some reverb and delay. The absolute staples when it comes to dub. You've just got to have them on everything, basically. And, yeah, we were... yeah, I set everything up on sends, so if you want to, you can just literally crank up A and B there, and then play it again. See? And some might say that the feedback is going on way too long. So when you put your dub sirens into the simpler, now you're able to play them at any pitch. Right? So if you just drop them into the project, then they're just that pitch. But if you want to, you can kind of try to figure out what chords this is doing. And I think it was E. And then you could go and try and do your dub siren in E, but maybe that's just taking it too far. You know, somebody I know who's struggling with addiction problems was showing me this app called, I think it's Addiction Tracker or something like that, and it's like it tracks how many days you can put in how many days you've been sober for, and then it also gives you some motivational quotes and tips and stuff like that. You know, he was saying it really helps. So if you're struggling, check out that app. But, you know, we're getting kind of deep here. But one thing I did is recently, I feel like the smartphone itself is what I'm addicted to. So recently I did this challenge where I just turned off my iPhone for 2 weeks. And obviously it's kind of difficult in today's modern world to live without it. But I got this watch. So I did the smartwatch challenge. The watch is running full Android. Now you might be thinking, what's the point in turning off your iPhone and then strapping an Android to your wrist? It's ridiculous. But the point is, the watch has a tiny screen, so you're much less likely to get stuck staring at it, you know. And it did. I do feel like it did me some good. So I did 2 weeks just with the watch. It's got like a SIM card in it, so it's actually like a little phone on your wrist. People do the dumb phone challenge. That's where I got it from. You know, I don't know if you guys have heard of the dumb phone challenge, where you challenge yourself to use an old school like flip phone for 2 weeks. But I decided to do my own one called the Smartwatch Challenge. Alright, we'll just leave it on E. That's it. That's what key it is. Anyway, so going back to the folders there, I used to have this one called Zion Train Dub Drums, and if I've still got it, then I'm going to show you now. Here we go. Zion Train Dub Drums. Loops. So we're at 170, so maybe it would be wise to use the 160 folder so they're at least like close to our BPM. So let's have a listen to some of these loops. Okay, no, I don't like that. So perhaps I should play Scientist. No, I don't like these ones. Maybe I should just choose the 140 ones, even though, you know, and then they'll just be played faster by Ableton. Future World Machines is asking me if I've got any Sound Clash vocals. Were you here the other week when I was sampling the Red Bull Culture Clash? I don't want to hear no AI, yeah? I know I didn't really answer the question. The answer is no. No, I've not got any like old school. Actually, maybe I do. There's a guy called Taman. Shout out Taman. He's an Irish guy, but he used to live here in Barcelona. And I'm pretty sure there's a folder here called From Taman somewhere. Where is it? Or is it Samples from Taman or something like that? Let me just type in Taman. So Taman is a guy who used to live in Barcelona, but then he moved to Melbourne, Australia. So he's doing his thing out there, and he's getting pretty big on the jungle scene. But one time I was making tunes with him, and he did give me some Sound Clash clips to use, but they don't appear to be here. But we've also got DJ Assault, so if you're interested in going through some of them, we've got VIP series DJ Assault, and we've also got bonus samples, 24-bit blockbuster samples. So they're all from Taman, and I have to be brutally honest with you, I've never used any of them. But here's some dub drums which I just brought in. Right, let me go back to the Zion Train dub drums. I like it, but I don't want the fancy bit. I just want the beginning, like this. Something weird's going on there. Shout out Flip. He's saying Juju bag of wire popped up in his head. So maybe it's in the same key or something, but I've not heard that one. So one thing you can do when you're using little dub loops like this for the drums is, let me just show you something. Let's zoom in on one of these. And you see how we've got the snare there. If I put this onto 1/16th note, get our little pencil tool, and here if I go to, wait, where is it? Where's the sends? I'm having a brain fart. How do you get to where your sends are? Alright, so it's here. Hybrid reverb, right? We need to be in automation mode. So was it Future World Machines was saying your shortcuts don't work? So I'm going to have to turn off the MIDI keyboard for a second to make my shortcuts work. So I can press A and get into automation mode, right? And now this is where you can see it. So mixer, hybrid reverb, right? Now what you can do is just draw in, you see that? If you get your pencil tool and just draw in this little bit where the snare is, and now listen to it. And you can do it like various different levels. So for example, on the first one you can do it lower, like that. And on the second one maybe a bit higher, so it sounds like this. And then lower, and then higher. So you do alternating, you know, and then on one of them, if you want to, you can take it all the way to the top. Don't know if I'm really convinced by the pattern. You know, it's like they call it stepper's dub. And stepper's dub is basically where you've got a 4 to the floor kick going kick, 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 like that, you know. And perhaps I should go looking through for some more drums, because I'm not really 100% sure if we're going to go for the stepper's dub style. Sometimes it's appropriate. I've never really been a 4 to the floor kind of guy. I'm more of a drum and bass, you know. People who like kick on every beat tend to like techno, house and stuff like that, and it's not really my thing. I think it's probably a better idea to just keep looking through. Because not all of them are steppers style. Actually, you know what? You hear that one? That's got the hi-hat. It's got the sort of dub style hi-hats going on. And then I can just add my own kicks and snares. Let me just listen to something. So, you know, no, I'm not someone who's like, oh, you're using loops, you're cheating. I'd never be like that, you know. But there is a disadvantage of using loops, because you have to stick with their kick, their snare, their hi-hats, and everything that whoever's made that loop has chosen for you. But when it comes to putting your drums together, you might want to choose your own kicks, you might want to choose your own snares, And what I've done here is I've just taken the hi-hat. And that kind of gives you the groove of the dub drums. But I can just add my own kicks and snares now, you know. Or I could go into one of these other dub loops and just choose the best snare. You know what? There was some where I was looking before in that dub sirens one. There was a load of snares in here. So you hear like little ones like that, and how it's got 3 snares. I could just steal one of these snares. So let's go for the simpler technique. Just drag in a simpler and get the... So, by the way, for anyone who doesn't really understand what I'm doing now, why am I making dub drums? The idea is that in the intro of this tune, there's going to be dub drums, and then for the drop, it's going to be drum and bass. I just thought I'd clarify that. So, I'm just trying to put together a kind of loop of some dub drums, and in the beginning, it's going to have this scientist chords going, and some melodica, and these hi-hats. And then here's the snare. Why is it not playing it? Oh yeah. That, but with loads of reverb. So, Shift, Command and M to make a MIDI clip. I usually like to find the C on the keyboard and then look for it. So you see it's highlighted in red there. Zoom right in. That's our note that we want. And I want to put that on the 2 and the... Do I want to put it on the 3? I think I want to put it on the 3 there. So, together with the hi-hat. Right, so we've got our hi-hat, we've got our snare. Now we just need a kick. That little organ thing could be good. See you later, Paul. Thanks for joining us, man. And I hope to see you here next Sunday. Alright, so I think the FL says FL dub drums. I'm not sure if this sample pack actually comes from FL Studio. For the ones who don't know, by the way, FL Studio was originally called Fruity Loops. And I found out an interesting fact about it the other day. That Kellogg's was the one that made them stop calling it Fruity Loops. Why? Because obviously they've got a cereal called Fruity Loops, but you might be thinking, well, one of them's a computer, like music software, and one of them's a cereal, so surely it should be fine for them both to have the same name. But Kellogg's, just to be not very nice, they said because they sometimes give away CD-ROMs in their cereal packets, that they're technically a software company. So that for that reason, you're going to have to stop calling it Fruity Loops. I just thought that was pretty snide of them. So they had to rename it FL Studio. Serial killer. Paul said he's going, but he's just going to hang around saying puns. Big up, Paul. Don't forget the organ. I need some kicks. Alright, so I'm bringing in another simpler. And by the way, you know how we've got a group at the top called drums? I usually, if I'm making totally different drums for my intro, I'll make another group called intro drums just to keep them separate. And there's a reason why I do that. And it's basically sometimes I like to just add some effects to the overall intro drums group. So I'll put some effects on the whole group, but I don't want them same effects to be on the normal drums group, so I separate them. Anyway, we've got a simpler here. We're going to need a kick. Maybe I'm stalling because I have no idea what type of kick to use. Let's keep going through this dub echoes because there was some snares in here, so maybe there's some kicks too. That rim shot was really nice, actually. No, let's keep going looking for a kick. There you go. I mean... Is that the only two kicks we've got to choose from in here? It's not my favourite. Let's just go to some normal, like in the DNB samples and see what these kicks are sounding like. Wait. Let's refresh my memory to hear the hi-hats and snare. That's pretty good, isn't it? How it just like kind of loops it on the one. Okay, only did it with that one. To be honest with you, I think damn is the one. I'll just play it a bit lower. And just like it was before, just having it on the one was actually pretty cool. There's this thing they do in reggae where it goes da-dum, and then there's this like late kick. I'll show you what I mean. So if I make a MIDI clip that's like 2 bars long, one thing they always do is this. Boom. Just there. You know? No, not there. There. I would like to get out my bass guitar and record some actual bass, but I'm not sure how it's going to work on the stream, to be honest. And let's go for the classic that some of you have seen me do before, where you go to these packs here and session drums multi-mic and maybe choose a crash from in here. Yeah, not sure. Is that too many kicks? Or is it better with the minimal style? Right, now we've got kick, snare, hi-hat and crash, and all of these can be grouped together to make intro drums. Istro. And I usually put that at the top actually. Then you've got intro drums, normal drums, and obviously here we'd have the bass. That's the main bass of the tune. Scientist, melodica, organ, and DS17 can all go into their own group called Instrum. Alright, and I'm going to hit save. Don't forget to save. Alright, so I've said this in many streams, but when you drag in the hybrid reverb, it's by default it's on 3.5 seconds, and that is quite a long decay time. Now when it comes to doing dub, you do want a kind of over the top reverb, but even having said that, maybe it's still too long, so let's go for 2.5 instead of 3.5. So I just think that that snare sounds kind of lame, and there was this rim shot that I heard in the reggae samples that I quite liked, so I could layer that with it and see if that just makes it sound a bit more crisp. So where was it? That one. So get another simpler. I seem to be doing everything in simplers today, and you know there's a lot of different ways you can do things in Ableton Live. You can either do your drums just in audio, you can do them in the drum rack, and today I'm kind of demonstrating that you can just put them all into little individual simplers if you want. So just drag in a simpler, get your sample, make sure you put the start point to actually where you want it, which in this case, you can see that there's a sort of like a like the sample actually starts there, and there's this bit before the rim shot. So you might want to try it from there, or if you want it really tight, you can start it from where, you know, it properly starts there. And since when you put it into the simpler, the main advantage of doing it this way rather than in the drum rack or whatever is that you can actually play it on the keyboard like this, and you can decide where you think it sounds best, even right down there if you want. Alright, so you heard the rim shot that I had already was sounding a bit, well, it's a bit dark, as in not very bright. So for that reason, I'm just going to create a MIDI clip here, Shift, Command and M. Put this on the third beat. So you know, you may remember from school when they were teaching you music, they were saying there's 4 beats to a bar, and you've got 1, the second one there, and then 3, and then 4. And when it comes to doing like half time kind of drums, you want to put it on the third beat of the bar, so it goes like this. And if I play them together, so that one's much louder, much crisper, but the idea is it's just going to reinforce the top end of the frequency spectrum. And if I play the whole intro drums now, let me just copy and paste that loads of times. It sounds like this. Alright, so it needs sending to the reverb. It needs EQing. So this was, I was saying it's just to reinforce the top end, so what you could do is just take out everything below 1K. And then if I play the other one, so we've got one snare that's kind of providing the mid-range, and one snare that's providing more of the top end. And then when you've got two snares layered together like that, the one thing you can do is, if you feel like it's now with the two of them it's kind of over the top loudness wise, you can select one, hold down shift, select the other one, so they're selected together. Now when you move the sliders, they move together, you know. So now you can adjust the sound of your overall snare by sliding them together like that. And I think now it's sounding a bit weak, so what I think we should have is more of the meat. And this one just needs to be sprinkled on top. Whoa, did you see that? The disc thing was flashing. So what's it saying? It's having trouble reading all this off the disc. Maybe I should do collect all and save, and then they'll all be in the same place. I don't know if that helps. So for the guys who don't know, if you see disc in the top right, that means that your Ableton's kind of struggling to read everything off your hard disk, which shouldn't be a problem on an SSD, especially just reading a few samples. I have no idea why it's doing that, but I just did a collect all and save, and what that's going to do is it's going to take all the various different samples from all the different places and put them in one folder, and maybe, just maybe, that could sort it out. It's worth a try, isn't it? So now I'm getting the spinning beach ball. Imagine. That's just the end of the stream, you know. Hey, by the way, let me know if you can still hear me and you can still see me, because it does look like my computer might be struggling right now. That's a bit of a shame, isn't it? That's the first time on a live stream that it's done anything like that. All right, let's see now. Let's see if the disc light is lighting up. Yeah, still. It's kind of ironic that at the beginning of this stream I was going on like, my computer's not struggling, everything's cool, blah, 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 but actually it is struggling to read the disc. So I wonder what's the best thing to do about that. You know, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce the crash. Why? Because you see, where is it now? This kit here, they're all multi-sampled, as you can see. All those different crashes, and every hit is like that, and it's a lot, you know. So if you just go to like this and freeze track and then flatten, then you've just literally got one sample rather than a million. So that could be one way of saving on disk. So let's try it now. Still. I mean, it's not a problem because you can actually hear the music and everything's fine, but I just don't like it. I don't like to see it flashing disc like that. Memory's filling up. Could it be actual RAM rather than the actual like SSD? So anyway, while I'm restarting Ableton, let me just read some more of this. So I already read the first part up until here where it says predecessor sound. So I'll carry on from here. Dubwise drum and bass tends to include more vocal dubs and delay effects than the full vocal toasts of Ragga Jungle. Reggae influences in the genre include the aforementioned use of dub delay, as well as samples of reggae instrumentation, reggae-influenced percussion and rhythms, and occasionally DJs or ragga MCs as well. Digital and breakage are considered to be the genre's pioneers, and some of their material like So Vain or Mars helped to popularise it. Dubwise partially has its origins in drum funk style, and elements of it, such as its reliance on live or live-sounding drumming, would carry over to Dubwise through drum funk's complex drum beats are typically absent. Though drum funk's complex drum beats are typically absent. So, based on that description there, some of the aspects there are... Jason, you're my IT technician on the stream. So Jason's saying that my cache could be full because obviously live streaming and running Ableton at the same time could be quite taxing on the computer. So you know what though, the cool thing is that the fan isn't even running. My old laptop would be, hey, did you see the Ableton Live 1.0 video where I was talking about the Dell and the fan on that one? That thing would be screaming for its life by now. Alright, let's hear the other drums then. Saying like, oops, yeah, if you press Command and X to cut everything, it can be a bit daunting because everything you've just worked on disappears for a second, but then you can just paste it at bar 17, or you can paste it at bar 33, and then this is like you're starting to do the arrangement now. So you've got this whole area here with 32 bars of intro, and then when it drops, it'll be bar 33. See, that was a good bit of detective work there, Jason, because you can see now that everything here, the DNB drums, the bass, and all the instruments don't trigger it. But if we go to the intro part, which is just intro drums, it basically flashes every time the snare hits. So something about that snare is making it like it's a very high bandwidth snare. Anyway, as I was saying before, as long as it doesn't actually cut out the audio, then I don't care, to be honest. I'll just carry on. So what you got, this is like when you're on a live stream, I suppose you've just got to prioritize the stream, right? So, anyway. So let's do some more stuff. So like, so far I've got the hot pants break, right? But you guys know I love the think break. And let's have a listen to some other breaks. So you saw for the guys who saw my DJ Zinc breakdown video, the one at the beginning of the video was this one. Lucille Brown and Billy Clark, Both Eyes Open. Cool break. Tara Bay says, put your samples in RAM. I was thinking about that. So what'd you do? There's a RAM button somewhere, isn't there? Is it in the simpler? Should be read for now anyway. Let me go back to the breaks. So, think. So it's like for the regulars, you've seen me talking about whether sometimes it's good to add the little vocal bits of the think break and sometimes it's good to not. But it's good to have the option, right? So I like to show you how to chop it up and then use them or don't use them. So here's the think break, and the sample that I've got of the think break is all 5 parts, which is 4 parts of the actual break, and then there's one that's this tambourine bit. So it sounds like this. And then this last one is this tambourine. So the thing is, Tara Bass, is that those samples that I was using there, I've used a simpler, right? Warp. Complex. So usually I would just drop them in. And perhaps I should have done that. But this time I was kind of demonstrating another way of doing your drums. Well, I think we've all learned something together today. That if you do your drums in individual simplers, then you do run the risk of them just triggering this disc warning. So it's probably not a good way of doing it. That's why the drum rack exists. So just use a drum rack, or just bring your individual drum hits into your project and just put them in the timeline without messing about with samplers, you know. Basically, Ableton Live is just one big sampler anyway. So what I've got here is the first little section of the think break, and it's 1 bar long. But as you can see, from bar 14 to 15 here, and then it carries on straight past, so obviously it's much longer than 1 bar. So what you do is you turn warping back on, and then you go out of it, and you click here at the end, hold shift, just drag it so that it's 1 bar long, and then you can play it and loop it, and it should loop perfectly. Let's do the next bit. So holding down command and dragging sideways so that you get to just at the start of the kick there, right? You want to put this on an actual bar, so why not just put it there right after the other one, bar 15. Now on my particular version of the think break, it's like it's got these gaps and you can clearly see them because there's just nothing there, it's just the line, right? So you can see here, that's where the sample ends. So what I like to do is just turn off the grids momentarily and click right where the sample ends and just press Command and E. That's the end of the sample there. Then all you have to do, turn warping back on, and this should be 1 bar of drums. So then you can put this to 1 bar, grab the end, hold shift and put it to 1 bar. Now let's do a little loop test. So what I like to do is press Command and L and loop it. And if it loops nicely, then you'll know that you've done it right. And if you want to double check, what you can do is turn on the metronome. So you know that it's 100% right and everything's cool. And also, to make it sound more like old school drum and bass / jungle, what you can do is change this algorithm. Instead of complex, you can put this on repitch, like that. Now when I loop this part, and this part, do the same. Loop it. Alright, so that just makes it sound like it's from the mid-90s. And I know that in the description of Dubwise it was saying that we're using more like modern production techniques, etc. But I just thought I'd show you that. So let's put this on 1 bar. Again, just change the warping. You can put it on repitch if you want. Grab the end of it, put it to 1 bar. Do the little loop test. Do the metronome test. Just to make double sure that it is actually perfectly on the grid. And when I say perfectly on the grid, I mean in terms of the 4 bar loop. I don't mean that every single hit is on the grid. So then you can go here to the end of this one. Look, it's pretty clear where it ends. Command and E, slice it. And don't delete the last part for now, because that's that tambourine and we might need that for the intro or something. Alright, and then as I was doing with the others, I'll put it on repitch, grab the end, hold shift, put it to 1 bar, Command and L to loop it. And now I've got 4 bars of it that I could loop all together if I want. Now the question is, with our Dubwise drum and bass track, is it going to sound good with squeaky James Brown talking in the background, or is it going to sound better with just bits of the think break, kick snares and shuffles? We can make an educated guess. So I will quickly show you how you can make a loop of it without any vocal. So first of all, put the grid onto 1/8 and then solo the think break. Listen to each one and you're going to want to look for a kick that doesn't have any vocal with it. So this kick, for example, you hear that it's got no vocal. Copy that. So just highlight it and Command and C. Let me move that tambourine over there somewhere, just out of the way. And here at bar 19 is where I'm going to build my little loop. So I've just pasted the kick there. Now we're going to look for another slice that doesn't have any vocal. And it could be a shuffle. Or we could just try and look for just more like a ride by itself. Let's have a listen. So actually this one here could be the start of our loop. Even the snare. So it goes kick, ride, snare, all with no vocal. But as you hear with the first one, after the snare he goes, yeah! And you might not want to have that yeah. So the point is, you can go to another one now and find the shuffle shuffle, like that. Maybe you want to use these ones, paste them over here. And then you can get a different kick. So you can decide to have kick snare, or you can just have like this, which isn't exactly a kick, but it's just something snare. It's like a ghost kick, basically. And then you could have this here. So let's say how this sounds. It's one bar of like mix and match bits of the think break put together. It sounds like this. Now that little thing before the snare doesn't sound good in my opinion, but what you can do is just try something else. For example, try the kick from the beginning. Paste that there. Which in my opinion also didn't sound that good. So it's back to the drawing board, you know. Let's listen to the whole thing. So why not just have this whole bit? There's no vocal in any of it. So there you go, you've got basically just two different bits of the think break. One's like kick, ride, snare, and the rest is shuffle, shuffle, snare, shuffle. And all together, it just makes a nice loop of the think break in just two easy slices. And if you decide that you don't like that kick, what you can do is just listen to the whole thing again. You might decide that you like this kick better, so paste that one there. It's essentially the same. Anyway, let's go back to our track. Let's go back to the drums that I made and see whether it sounds better with or without James. So here's the drums. Wait, it's these drums there. So the second one's going to need to be slightly rearranged a bit. It's supposed to go shuffle, shuffle, snare. So the snare's going to come early. Wait. That snare should be there. And then maybe this could just go there. So let's have a listen to this. Almost. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just turn this down quite a bit and then just layer it with the drums that we already had. And put it next to the hot pants break there. Let's have a listen. And what I did with the other one, if you remember, for the guys who were here at the beginning of the stream, what I did is I kind of chopped out the kicks and snares and turned them down a bit. And this time I'm going to do it with a bit more precision. So before I just did it by eighth note, but this time I'm going to just literally pinpoint the kick and turn it down a bit like that. And the same with the snare. Just go in, focus on literally just the hit there. Command and E, turn it down. 4 to 5 dB. And I'm just going through and doing this. And the reason why I'm doing this is because we already have our own kicks and snares layered with this. So the way how audio works is when you stack one thing on top of the other and then on top of the other, they all sum together and make really loud audio, right? So if you've got 3 snares that are all hitting at the same time and are all hitting the same frequencies, they stack on top of each other and just make it so that the peak is really high. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it really difficult for you to make this loud when it comes to doing your mix and master. So for that reason, you turn down these kicks and snares a bit. Now you can feel free to experiment and try this. Don't just blindly follow what I'm saying. Try it, see if it makes your see if it makes your mix down slightly clearer. But like if I play these drums all together now, what you want is basically you want it to have the shuffle kind of that sort of vibe, but without like layering too many loud kicks and snares on top of each other. And going back to talking about DJ Zinc, I actually watched one of his videos where he was talking about his process. It's a video called My Process, right? And what he does is he was talking about using side chaining. So you can put a side chain compressor on the break and then have the input as the kick or the snare, or put one of each, you know? And that way your kick and your snare are going to slightly duck the break every time they hit. It's essentially the same thing I've just done, but I kind of did it manually, and he's doing it with a compressor that's kind of doing it automatically. And that's it. We've basically just added the think break. Oh yeah, so I was saying before, it might sound better with or without the little vocal snippets, you know? So let me just go to 2 bars, highlight all this, and just press Command and D to duplicate it all. So for the people who've just joined us, what we're making is a Dubwise drum and bass track, and the way how it is so far is, what I essentially started with is a scientist sample from a dub tune that sounds like this. After that, I made my own drum and bass drums to put with it that sound like this. Then I made back in the day, I kind of recorded every note of my melodica so that I could play it as a multi-sampled instrument in the sampler in Ableton Live. So I've added that, and I've made this little melody. And we've also got the organ. And the idea of all these instruments is that they're supposed to be for a bit of an intro, you know, and then it's going to drop into the drums and bass. And I did also make some intro drums, which are kind of some dub drums. And they sound like this. So let me put scientist in the intro. We'll have that twice. You know what? I'll just get rid of the thing. It doesn't matter about James Brown being in there. Jim West is saying you can fade the melody as it starts and then drop it low towards the end. Are you talking about the melodica now? Fade it in. Alright, so we've got 16 bars like this, and obviously, as Jason Story quite rightly pointed out, it would be good if we had a bit of dub siren in there. Or maybe actually police siren. What about 1 octave down? Sorry, guys. And then slower is better, yeah. I don't want to keep playing it. I think maybe it should just go whoa, whoa, and then loads of delay on it. Dum. You know those Bob Marley reggae rolls? And it goes... Need something like that coming in before the second 16. Should I use one of these? Having drum bum and then have the snare double, you know? Dum brum bum. So I want snare, roll. Wait, I'll show you what I mean. Right, wait. Snare. So snare. So that's going to be there. All right. Might sound cheesy, but let's have a listen. And like everything else, I'm going to send it to some reverb. That's when the melodica comes in. But what I want is the last bar of the melodic, the last little bit of the melodica there. Yeah, it's the last one bar coming in first, like this. All right, listen to this now. Ah! I've just had a notification saying my hard disk is almost full, so that'll be why that's happening. Alright, I've just emptied the recycle bin, so hopefully it's not going to do it anymore. Maybe it should just have no drums up until that point. I kind of want the roll to be louder. This roll here, I want that cranked. Alright, let's try one more time. Listen to the roll coming in. That's when we need a vocal sample. Alright, hang on a second because I am going to have to just go and take a leak, so I'll be back in a sec, but in the meantime I'll just leave you with some drums and bass. Yo, shout out everybody who's still with me. Thank you for waiting. So, it's looking like this is going to have to be a two-parter because I was supposed to finish an hour ago. But basically what we've got is, I think it's going to be a 16-bar intro. So let me just show you how you can cut out sections of silence and move stuff around. So you see here from bar 25 to 33, there's nothing there, right? And what about if I just want to move this here over? So what you do is you go Shift, Command, and X, and it cuts it. But not only it cuts, it moves the other one over like that. You see that? So it just cuts time and moves everything accordingly. So what I think is going to happen in this tune, this is probably going to be one of the shortest intros in my career so far. I don't think I've ever made a tune with a 16-bar intro before, but I think it's just going to be a... Wait. Where's the scientist? Alright, so it's going to go like this. We're going to have... We're going to have 8 bars of drums. Is this too short? And then it's going to cut out. Vocal sample. And then it just drops into drums and bass there. Is that too short? I've never done that before, so you know, there's a first time for everything. Shortest intro ever. Let's play that one more time. So we start with the roll. Obviously no last bit of the melodica there, that just gets cut off. Obviously, like the scientist there'll just be way too much. I'll automate this. So here's what's going to happen. So if you press A to get into automation mode, you see that these red lines appear, right? So for the people who don't know, automation is just a way of making things control themselves, essentially. So there's making the different controls of Ableton Live happen automatically. So here you've got hybrid, reverb, and delay, and they correspond with those A and B knobs on this page here. A to send something to reverb, B to send something to delay, right? So what you can do is, you can draw in these red lines to make things gradually slope up. For example, what you could do with the reverb here is make it start off with not that much and then gradually fade up to have loads. So I'm going to make it cut off with that last note there, and then I'm going to automate it so that the delay also comes in. So right now B delay is on nothing. So you draw in these dots like this and you make it slope up. And you can make it gradually slope up a bit, and then on that last note it's going to come in a lot more like this. So it sounds like this. Now, the timing of it isn't right. And what we're going to have here is the organ that I made. So let me get out of automation mode. I'm going to paste the scientist sample. And you see this organ here. And again, I want the last bar to come in first. So copy that last bar and paste it at the beginning here at the front. And then I'm just going to get rid of that note. So it goes like this. Don't want this melodica. And maybe I just want one more note of this as well. Hang on. I'll show you what I mean in a sec. Might want that note there pasted at the beginning as well. And don't forget that we automated that to come right up, so bring it down again. Alright, let's play the whole thing. Starting with that little reggae roll at the beginning. Is anyone still there in the chat? So listen, I know I said in the video description how to make Dubwise. I think it's going to be a two-parter. So this is how to start making Dubwise. And we're going to have to continue next time. And there's too much reverb on here. Remember, but that's something you need to remember, is whenever you automate something up, you need to remember to put it back down again. So as I was saying before, I've never made a 16-bar intro in my life, and maybe by next week I might have changed my mind and I might want to put it as 32 bars, but for now this is what we've got. So we just start off with the quick roll. We go into the melodica solo. And if I had a Jamaican like Ragga MC friend, I'd get them to come and voice this next week. Or maybe I'll just find a sample or something. Shout out DNB. Thank you, man, and welcome. So every Sunday evening at 8 o'clock I do these live streams. That's 8 o'clock Spanish time, 7 o'clock UK time, and if you're in America it's probably like the morning or something. So this is Sunday evening where I am, 8 till usually 10 or 11, and right now it's 11:15, and I am quite hungry, so I think I'm going to have to go in a sec. But I hope you guys have learned something. I hope you like what we've got so far, and obviously we'll continue making it next week. And next week I'll add some different types of bass lines, you know, using Vital and that. Make the bass more interesting. More dub sirens and stuff. Yes, Mr. M.A. I will. I will be making more remake videos very soon, and I'm very pleased with that last one, and I'm glad, you know, it's like, before I go, I'm just gonna like talk about it a little bit. So obviously while I was making it, I was a little bit concerned because obviously you don't want to just spill the beans on somebody stealing a load of samples, you know. But obviously I've watched a lot of Zink's videos on it, and I've seen that he's quite open and honest about where all the sounds come from, and it's 30 years old now. And the fact that he's selling the record now on his Bandcamp, I think he has been in talks with Sony Records and the Fujis and stuff, so that one's a bit of a safe one. But you do need to, I think I do need to tread carefully when it comes to revealing people's samples and stuff like that, you know. And for the record, I did message Zink on Instagram about that, but he didn't see it. And I was so happy when he commented yesterday, and obviously he wasn't annoyed or anything, so that was like a weight off my shoulders, and it was just like I felt on a natural high when I read his comment. So that was so cool, and yeah, I'll definitely be doing more of those remake videos. But like I say, I need to tread carefully. I need to get in touch with artists and get everything cleared beforehand so that I don't tread on anyone's toes. Because obviously I love drum and bass. I love the drum and bass scene. I have big respect for all of the producers and DJs, especially the guys that have been doing it since the mid-90s. So thank you everyone for watching tonight. Thanks for tuning in, especially everyone who's been here for hours. I really appreciate it, and let's carry on next time. And you know what I might do? I might do a poll of which, because there's at least 3 or 4 tunes where I've said, let's carry on next time. So I'll give you the choice of which one you want to finish. We could finish the Dubwise one. We could finish a Jungle one. We could finish the Liquid one. We could finish any of the above, you know. So I'll do a little poll and see what everyone wants to do. But thanks again, guys. Take care. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Sunday.